Good afternoon, my name is Stefano Carpani. I'm a psychoanalyst, a Jungian psychoanalyst and sociology, and this is the second part of a video titled TINDER and the Normal Cause of Love. Last week we looked at Ulrich Beck and Elisabeth Beck-Gershon, the normal cause of love, which is somewhere here actually. And we underline how, according to those authors, society has changed in the past 30, 40 years. Today, I want to look at different things. I want to look at two authors. One is Darlene Bergman. The other one is Eva Lutz. Darlene Bergman is a psychoanalyst. Eva Lutz is a sociologist, a Marxist sociologist who doesn't like psychoanalysis very much, although her sister is a psychoanalyst. Their views are opposite on what love is and what sex is in the 21st century. But first, let me start from my own recognition about love. Love, I propose, does not exist when it's a projection, when it's a fantasy. Because when we project something outside on someone else, we miss something in ourselves. So we fall in love with that person of whatever sex and whatever gender when we miss something. Love is about finding, not searching. Love, very bluntly, maybe in a banal way, could be when I'm fine enough, calm and reassured and living a life that is balanced. And I sit on a bench and I enjoy what is around myself, I enjoy myself. Well, I notice there is someone else sitting on the bench next to me, a human being of whatever sex and gender. And we start a conversation without projection and without fantasies. And through this conversation, we understand that there is something in common that makes our life better. Not that we find something in that person that we don't have, that makes it richer just because I'm missing something, because I'm poor. But actually, I like the company of that person. And this nowadays is quite a miracle, I would say. For love to happen, we must drop all hopes and expectations. Because hopes and expectations are fantasies and projections. And we have to let longing arise. Longing are related to the soul, to the self, while hopes and expectation are related to ego, to consciousness, to wanting, and even will to power. Perhaps before to be able to love truly, we need to be or to become ourselves as separate individuals. Especially to let go those proposals, those models coming from our parents. Our biological parents, of course, but also the putative, the society, the institutions. Before to be able to love, to fall in love and to start a meaningful relationship, we have to be at one with ourselves. We have to go through the desert, through the forest. And in the forest, in the desert, we grow or die within. Therefore, we learn to accept the situation as it is, our situation, our life as it is, and sometimes come to conclusion. And another point of view that is very important for me is it's not true that if we act correctly with good heart, good intention like pious people, all will be good. No. This is what Illman underlined in one of his books. It's not true if we act correctly with good heart and intention that things will work out. So for me, to contrast love as projection, as fantasies, is important to work on oneself. Of course, there are these beautiful and irrational romantic love or sublime love, like, for example, Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Can we imagine Romeo and Juliet nowadays? Two families that used to hate each other. Maybe now this family would not hate themselves so much. But of course, that play talks about much more things than just love. It talks about society, about opposite poles. Let's start now after this little introduction from Eva Lutz. Eva Lutz was born in Fez. She's teaching in Jerusalem and France. She's an expert on Tinder, and she talks about Tinder as a capitalist machine. Of course it is, as all other apps, because they come to you and they are a product. And you can get addicted. And you can build an identity. But as we will see in a bit, the positive, between commas, of Tinder and all these dating apps is that are pluralistic and democratic. But I will not say more. The negative side is the compensation of our aloneness. Let's look at love through the enlarging lenses proposed by Eva Lutz. She talks about this enchanting love. She says, a widely accepted view opposes pre-modern marriage determined according to a criteria of social rank, status and wealth to the modern mode of mate selection, in which love as spontaneous emotion presumably now plays a primordial role in mate selection. Yet, while more emancipated and more egalitarian, and thus more free and unconstrained, modern love is also counterintuitively more rationalized than its pre-modern counterpart. I don't think so. I truly don't think so. We could talk about spontaneity, about projection, about complexes. Then, she underlined that this change is paradoxically caused by, or at least concomitant with, the fact that there is no longer a strong institutional distinction between interest-driven and purely romantic decision, indeed because these two modes of action have become closely intertwined. One could also challenge this. She talks about love at first sight. Love at first sight contains a few consistent characteristics. It is experienced as a unique event, unexpectedly erupting in one's own life. It is inexplicable and irrational. How about if love at first sight is exactly love driven by projection and fantasies? Of course, a few times it's not, but most of the time it is. She says that it is incited upon the first encounter and therefore not based on cognitive and cumulative knowledge of the other. Rather, it arises from a holistic and intuitive form of experience. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But then we have to go deeper. We have to get to know the person. And there is a moment when projection and fantasies should stop. And we should get grounded. You know, the first time of love is really crazy. We live on the moon. But then, if we keep living on the moon, that love is idealistic and is very dangerous. Maybe after a week, a month, a year, 10 years, 20 years, that love ends. I'm not very positive about this because I believe that actually we should be allowed to marry only after the age of 35 and 40. And perhaps not even having kids before 35 and 40. Because before, we don't really know who we are. How many couples right now in 2020 are still together? After 10, 15, 20 years of marriage, we change. And if the couple doesn't change itself, it's deemed to end. So what is this enchantment? She looks at this with Weber and says, Weber was never entirely clear about it, but we may grasp it a contrario, by reflecting on what enchantment is. An enchanted experience is mediated by powerful collective symbols that key one to a sense of the sacred. It is based on beliefs and feelings that involve and mobilize the totality of the self. These beliefs and feelings are not processed in second-order cognitive system and are ultimately unjustifiable. These symbols constitute and overwhelm the experiential reality of the believer. In enchanted experience, there is no strong distinction between the subject and the object. Of course. Jung talks about participation mystique, when two subject or subject and object get involved and intertwined. So, Disenchantment is both a property of belief that becomes organized by knowledge system and expert culture as opposed to hot symbols, and a difficulty in believing. This is because both the cognitions and emotion organizing belief become rationalized. And from these eludes go against psychology, psychoanalysis, biology, and evolutionary psychologies, because she claims they have explained the feeling of love by subsuming it under such categories as the unconscious, sex drive, hormones, survival of species, or brain chemistry. Under the age of scientific explanation, these frameworks undermine the view of love as an ineffable, unique, and quasi-mystical experience, ultimately undermining both its absoluteness and uniqueness. Although she underlined psychoanalysis and dynamic psychology put love at the center of the constitution of the self, they undermine its cultural status by viewing it as the result of psychic process, such as those of psychic trauma, Oedipus conflict, and repetition compulsion. Then she looked at Freud and she said the Freudian popular culture in which most modern polities have become steeped has made the forceful claim that love is a reenactment of early childhood conflicts, and that it is often nothing but the repetition of a drama with other early protagonists who are the true origin and even the cause of the present object of love. Wrong. That is not love. That is the projection and the fantasies about love. True love is something else. True love is beyond what she is underlining, beyond the Oedipus or Electra complex, is beyond repetition compulsion, is beyond psychic trauma or even psychic drama. Love can only be when we've gone through the forest and the desert, when we had the chance to grow, when we've been alone with ourselves, and we're able to answer the question, who am I and what do I want? Now, I would like to look at Darlene Bregman before to look at Tinder in more depth. Darlene Bregman underlined the growing search for alternate forms of marriage, so following the normal cause of love that we looked at last week. The growing search for alternate forms of marriage seems to reflect an increased sense of despair about traditional marital relationship and to be part of a larger search for more meaningful and more intimate kinds of relatedness. It seems to include a quest to liberate man and woman from stereotypical sex role, as well as increased sensitivity to the common human dilemmas of both sexes. This is reflected, she underlined, a trend away from conformity to socially prescribed roles and socially prescribed relations towards a new emphasis on individuality, psychological honesty, integrity, and self-definition. Of course, but this is tricky because what about the addiction to all this? To become addicted to not relate to others. She also underlines that the ways in which the psychological and sociological reciprocally influence each other. But she would also note that being able to identify which is which may be crucial, which is which means the psychological and the sociological, may be crucial if either is to be dealt with effectively. So she say, guys, let's not put sociology and psychoanalysis against, let's put them together, as many underlined, Frosch, Orbach, Samuels, even myself. Psychosocial is so important because they are mutually influenced. She underlines, I believe the importance of inner psychological phenomena as distinct from external social phenomena tends to be neglected in a culture oriented as it is more toward external rather than internal condition of living. Both the external, both the internal contaminates each other. She also underlines that she talks about the continuum of relative intimacy. There would be the kind of relationship that is not used in the service of inauthenticity and self-evasion continually, and in which intimate relatedness is achieved. Such a relationship is geared to being charged or redefined in the needs of the individual participant change. It provides the opportunity for affirmation and for the continuing discovery of the uniqueness of each participation through their involvement with each other, and becomes a medium for self-expression and expanding self-awareness of both participants. These gender lines requires room for divergence and non-complementarity, respect for individual needs and differences, tolerance for negative as well as positive feelings, and the willingness of both partners to risk the unknown in relation to themselves as well as to each other. This is important because it links to the fact that the most of the time I love you only if you have the guarantee that you love me. I love you because I get something from you, because I have hopes and expectations, but this way we kill longings. So, actually, the opposite of this guarantee is trust in the present, trust in the right now. And this is truly psychological more than sociological. She continues, another way of formulating this is that the commitment is not to loving feelings of being loved or belonging at any price, as in pseudo-mutuality, or to hostile feelings in the service of self-evasion and evasion of the other. So much is it to authentic communicative interaction and genuine mutuality. This is very important. Authentic commutative interaction and genuine mutuality. And then she underlines, following Barbara, intimacy can occur if either participant in a relationship is relating to a fantasy or a projection, or is relating as the embodiment of a fantasy or a projector, or when the relationship is being used in any other way as an interpersonal defense in the service of self-evasion to avoid the experience of personal anxieties. All of these preclude veridical perception of self and other that are basic to genuine intimacy. And here comes in Tinder. What is Tinder? Tinder, as many other things, is something that came up in society and is not new. Tinder and all other dating apps. Why? Because Tinder is something that actually is required by society. In an individualized society where there is no collective. In the past, people used to meet at the church, maybe used to meet at their job, used to meet in the community. Now it's very difficult to meet and mate. If you move your first step or you extend an invitation to dance, you might be sued by the lawyers of the receiver of the invitation. But Tinder and all these other apps are safe, at least in principle, because they could be pluralistic and democratic. You can build your own self-identity. You can build a mask. You can put your picture, your best picture, your worst picture, and a little bit of commentary about you. It's not your real you, actually it's an avatar. And this can work until the social and psychological structure of society steps in. Because as soon as we apply the social and psychological characteristic of the society, this exercise is gone. Tinder could be an exercise of freedom, but we are not free because we are psychosociologically included in a society. Then there is another very important point, aloneness. When we are alone and we cannot get in contact with the other. This is for me the negative side of Tinder. The second is the addiction. Dating, sexting, drinking, working, fitness. They're all addiction that shows that we're not in balance with ourselves. But we know also that in a bourgeois society, Whatever is taboo has to be put away. So what Tinder does is bringing this back, but from the private sphere, not from the public sphere. Next time, I would like to to present a case study of a patient of mine that came to me because she felt empty and that relationship couldn't last. And this was because of her projection and fantasies on a man, on a person, on a partner. And she was looking and searching, and she was never finding. Thank you. Bye-bye.